All right, guys, we will get started. Again, go ahead and grab a syllabus. And then there are some notes for our number 2 that we're going to be going through to see God as the missionary here. So we'll go ahead and pray to get started. Heavenly Father, we seek to be students of men and women who have gone before us, who have spent their lives proclaiming your word, to see your kingdom advanced, not just strengthened at the core, but advanced on the outer edges, God. Just on the fringes, they seek to sew more patches on to the quilt of your kingdom. God, we want to learn from them as we learn from your word. So I pray that you would give us humility. There's so many, a ton of issues when it comes to missions, and a ton of ways that it is done and ways that it's looked down upon. God, just give us humility to come and to realize that we stand on the shoulders of other missionaries. Missionaries who went up to Europe, missionaries who went to Korea, God, missionaries that have gone to Africa and proclaimed your gospel. We would not be here if it were not for you and your Spirit moving through them. So God, I pray that you would use this class as a means by which we can continue to carry the torch, to keep the light of your kingdom shining brightly in the outer parts of darkness. Amen. Amen. All right, we're starting. We'll start off with the syllabus. You look. I didn't do the logo. Adam did. I don't do that stuff. School of Theology. Kind of our genesis behind that was we wanted to train up men and women to have redemption move beyond us. We didn't want it to be focused upon us, so we thought the best way to train up the next generation and leaders in this church was to build them up in the Word. And so we started with church history and just thought it gives us a good landscape, a good way to see who we are in relation to church history, who has gone before us. And you guys endured the class, did you not? It was quite good.
It was very good.
You guys, this is a walk in the park. Like Rocky's handing you candy, basically, compared to the swamp that we trudged through in church history. But we had, 12 to 1,500 pages of reading, an hour lecture that was prepared, and then a 7-page paper that you wrote and then presented on. So this is nothing compared to that. But it was quite profitable. So we did that, and then we did exegesis and hermeneutics, how to read the text real close. So how do you read narrative? How do you, remember you guys talking about poetry, right? Like how do you read poetry? How do you read prophecy? And how do we be good students of the word to read it very closely? So when Paul is saying because, or for, or therefore, or since, like grammatically, how do all of those interact together? That's what we were doing in exegesis and hermeneutics. Then we took a step back, and then we did biblical theology. Okay, if we can read it closely, let's take a step back. And then we traced themes from Genesis all the way to Revelation. I recall you did the city, right?
Yep.
And a bunch of different things. And you did marriage as well with someone. And so you would see how God's word is this unified whole from beginning all the way to the end. And I know for me that was, I think, the most impactful class because it really challenged me personally, my understanding of the word. Coming, just studying a lot of languages and everything like that, you just read it very closely and that's what you do. And to be able to step back and go, oh, there's this grand theme going on. Of God redeeming his people in the temple, in the city, and marriage is not just Ephesians 5, it's, you see it before creation and all the way at the end. And so for me, it was really challenging in seeing how do we approach Scripture. And then finally, we did kind of a capstone class, which was teaching, preaching, evangelism. So how do we take all of these things of church history and kind of knowing who we are? And some of you guys have never heard that. That's a telephone. Ring it. It'll go to someone else. Should. Okay. So that was a kind of a capstone class of how do we articulate all of these different things, whether we're just evangelizing with coworkers or the street, or whether we're preaching, or whether we're teaching a class. How can we use all of these truths given to us in the Word and express them in various areas of our life? And then now we're turning the corner and moving to missions. So we were kind of using these truths as like, okay, kind of a local context. How do we do this in Rochester? Now we're taking the next step to say, how do we do this around the world? And we have not a lot, 4 missions trips planned out for next year. 3 to Roatan, Honduras, in March. What did they do? March,
June, November.
March, June, November. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, so March, June, and November. We've committed, we're not a large church, but we've committed to going down to help out the Johns family. They are involved in training up national pastors to reach their own people. And so that's our aim. And we have another church plant going out. I would love for us, after Joe and Patrick kind of get their sea legs under them and they're kind of walking on their own, I would love for us to raise up several families. Maybe this can be the next focus of our church. Raise up several families. Find a good team that can fit together and send them off. Maybe to Southeast Asia. And I think that would be a beautiful, beautiful thing. One, not just where the family's going, but even for the family staying, to go, oh, like I don't have to be. I can be someone regular. When you go through this book, you'll be blown away. They're not like, Mark Dever, John MacArthur super pastors who just go be super pastors across the seas. No, they're nurses who go. Total tangent, you'll also realize going through this book, single females typically make the best missionaries. They really do. They really do. And read Amy Carmichael. Just read about her. You'll be blown away. So if we as a church can do that, raise up families and send them out and hold the rope when they go down into the pits of darkness to bring the light of the gospel there, I think that would be a beautiful thing. So the textbooks. Foreign to familiar, I'm going to be reading this with you guys. I don't know much about it. I think it's a YWAM. Is it? It's not a YWAM. I think it might be. I don't quite know. Publication about just the basics of hot and cold cultures. How do we relate to people that are not like us, which is really hard, and it seems short, and don't think that it's not insignificant. Missionary burnout is because people don't take this into consideration. It's not that as though they don't believe the gospel, but friction amongst teams, and then friction because they just don't understand the culture is one of the main reasons missionaries from what I've from whom people I've related to is one of the main reasons of burnout. So, foreign to familiar, that's going to be one of the textbooks you're going to be reading. Theology and practice of mission, is a glorious book. This is fairly light reading, good concepts. This is dense. This is not a lot of pages, but it's going to take you time if you want to digest what's in here. take your time and work through it. One of my favorite books in all of seminary was working through this, and because I gave it an A. I grade every book. I got an A. For me, coming out of doing some missions work, not a lot. It was mostly rah, 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 siskumba, throw out tracts, go on awesome expeditions, and I kind of became sometimes a little jaded to what it was. And for me, this was really eye-opening to see the theological undergirding of what's really going on with missions. So this is a phenomenal book. Finally, Jerusalem to Irian-Jaya by Ruth Tucker, a lady from Michigan, I believe. Snippets, just short biographies. One of the most, I've read this book while Rachel and I were in, where were we? Hong Kong. Driving along the public transit that Hong Kong takes is where I read this book, and it's unbelievable. Just in some of this, I mean, some of them are just 4, 5, 6, 7 pages, and you get a little glimpse into their lives and the call that God has placed in their lives and the sacrifices they make for the sake of God's glory and His kingdom is quite challenging and very humbling. And it's story after story after story of heartache and toil and plowing and planting seed. And some people, it's the glorious story of reaping the harvest of previous generations. But Ruth Tucker, Jerusalem to Irian-Jaya, a kind of a movement, a book following the movements of missionaries around the world. Any questions about school theology, why we do it, the textbooks or anything like that? None. Okay. Expectations. We're only here several times. Please come. I know some of you work nursing shifts. You might be here, you might not. That's understandable. But don't skip the class to just stay home. Don't do that. And go to these last 2 pages on the syllabus. It has the lecture schedule, and then finally is the reading and the homework schedule. Read in advance so that you're prepared for what's going to be lectured. Whereas you're just coming into a cold and won't sink in as much. Do that, and then the lecture schedule as well. Be ready for that. We'll pass one around. You guys can sign up for snacks. I brought water tonight. Missionary biography presentation. You go to page 2 of the syllabus. You guys see that? We're going to be starting the next class, September 13th. We'll give an example of missionary bio. It's just going to be maybe 10 minutes long. 10 minutes, 12 minutes. Give a little compilation of their life, and then 3 or 4 application points towards the end. So it's not a lot, but you can communicate a lot in 10 minutes. Not a lot of time, but try to do it well. And so for next time, what we're going to do is pass around a sheet. You guys will sign up for it. If someone takes your person in advance, come with 2 or 3 names. So we don't have multiple presentations on the same person. So I have a couple names in advance. You can just page through this book. That would be my suggestion. Page through this book, so then at least you have some material to work with, and you're not starting from scratch. So that's going to start then on the 27th, September 27th is when that's going to be started. We're going to be having the missionary bios as well. And then the cultural distinction survey, Rocky's going to be emailing out a link in which you guys are going to be taking a test. It's kind of in correlation to this, where you're going to be able to see what my time-oriented, my relational-oriented, and we're going to be using that then, and you guys are going to go on groups, and learn about this, talk about it, then you're going to be presenting a little bit on that later on, but don't worry about that now, but it's out there. You'll just take the link, or take the quiz on the link and kind of see where you land in relation to that. Any questions about this whatsoever? Yes?
So the reading and homework, so do we have to do first and the second to be ready for the 13th? Like, so should you read chapters 3 through 9 and 3 through 4 to be ready for the 13th?
Yeah, read those in advance, so you've got a week, a makeup class. Yeah, so you're going to go 1 through 9 of Ashford, and then 1 through 4, yes, 1 through 4 of this, 1 through 9 of this, which is doable. You get out of it what you put into it, guys, so that's life. Any other questions? Nothing? Okay. I want to just take some time, and we have a lot of new faces in here. Just say your name. We're not going to rush through it. I really genuinely want to know. This isn't a cheap throwaway, intro just to say we did it. Just name, and give us a background of your missions work you've done, or if you haven't really gone on missions, just cultural exposure that you've had, or anything like that. Yeah, so Jess, you can just start.
My name's Jess. That's my name. And I'm so sorry, okay, so missionary stuff experience. So I've honestly never done super ton of missions, and then I took perspectives 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago. And that just convicted me to the core of what does it look like to do missions well, and just strategies that have been done in the past, looking at missionaries, and then also just seeing what has the church been doing? You've mentioned too, just the history of the church and how we've come to where we are now. And then through that class, I met a guy who was the president of Radius International, which is a missionary training school down in Tijuana, Mexico. So I went down to that school in 2017 to 2018. It was a 10-month-long training program to do church planting among unreached people groups. And they strategically put it in TJ. So you're in a new culture, so you have to learn their language, learn how to be awkward, and just meet people that aren't like you. And in a very warm culture, so it's very nice. And so, yeah, was down there for 10 months, came back here, formed a team down there with, there's currently 10 of us, and yeah, came back here, kind of gear and ready to go and be sent out to Thailand. And so, yeah, still in that process of
Where in
going.
Thailand?
Where?
Yeah.
We currently don't know exactly where in Thailand. We'll start out in Bangkok to learn Central Thai, and then from there go to a more rural context to do the second context. Probably Eastern area, Eastern province.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, still looking at going. Just changed churches in the meantime, and now I'm here. And then COVID. And I'm single. So anyways, that's, issues in my life. But yeah.
So what are some challenges that you kind of foresee? I mean, this is quite tangible for you, more so than I think other people in the class. What are some challenges you might foresee going to missions?
I mean, I think I'm already facing some even now of just this waiting process and the mundane and idolizing things, idolizing marriage or idolizing work. Because they're people are Jess, you might just learn two words in Thai, and that's going to be good enough. And you're going to be that's a good job well done for the day. And so just remembering those things, and I mean even just learning personalities and team is a big thing that can take you off the field. And so just working through conflict resolution with brothers and sisters in Christ. And I think those are just big things, and there's going to be obstacles, and just being able to be flexible with them. Even here, we have to be patient and wait to figure out what do borders look like and visas and things. And with a team, it'd be amazing to have a team sent out all from the same church, because I'm on a team we're from 4 different churches. And so we meet weekly, every Friday via Zoom, because we're all over the US. So I think that even can just be hard on a team already before we're going. So there's definitely challenges, but like at the end of the day, it's like, it's worth it. And I have to remind myself of that, like counting the costs and that good comfort factor. Yeah, it's like, it's a daily struggle. I mean, Adam hears it a lot, like every other week I meet up with him. He's like, okay. I'm like, yeah, I'm still struggling. But again, I'm ordinary. Like I'm nothing like this, I don't know, this extreme Christian that's going. Like, I'm willing and I'm able and I'm convicted by his word.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Nice. Very good. Thanks, Jess.
I'm Roel. Yeah, I don't have any experience with missionary work at all, but very open-minded, willing to learn, and yeah, I don't know. I think there's just opportunity here to help others. I mean, like I like the opportunity that's presented. So I've never been in a church where like these kind of opportunities have been available. So it's kind of just seeing where if that's a fit for me. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, even we're so gifted that we literally have the nations here. So even much of what we're going to learn is applicable even if you don't get your passport stamped.
Right.
You know, you can use a lot of this.
Yeah.
Just going to eat some Somali food. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's good.
My name's Macy. I also don't have a lot of missions experience. I did do a medical mission to Mexico, and that's something that I'm very interested in pursuing. I also took perspectives last winter? Yeah, and so I don't know necessarily like if
What brought you to take the class?
just interested in missions.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't even know. I think I heard about it from Kylie because she had taken it. Kylie was my roommate. And then, yeah, mission work has always been something that I feel like I get excited about when I like talk to missionaries and when I read the word, when I, I'm convicted by it. So I don't necessarily know what those action steps are going forward, but I want to, learn more, be open-minded, look for opportunities where God is leading me and using nursing or not using nursing. I don't know what that will look like, or maybe staying. And I have done some stuff through Friendship Place and started pre-COVID doing SALT, Somali Adult Leadership or Literacy Training. And so I don't know. The nations are here, but also like I want to be open to going and maybe using like medicine as kind of like a doorway.
Yeah, nice platform. That's an amazing platform. Yeah. Cheers.
I'm Kirsty. I also have not really had any missions experience. I took perspectives. I was hoping to go on a missions trip this year, but obviously that did not work out very well for us. I have met a lot of different nations at work, though, even before taking perspectives. We have a lot of refugees who come. So I've met Somalis, Bosnians.
At work, which is
Benchmark.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a factory. And
They come get a factory job as refugees.
we get a lot of random tech people coming and going. And if you just sit and talk to somebody in the lunchroom, I think somebody said we had like 27 different countries represented or something.
Oh, really?
Wow.
So,
Nice.
and a ship crossover is done in Bosnian.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some cultural opportunities.
Mm.
Hi everyone, I'm Kylene. I've been on 2 Jesus film trips, one to Gambia in Africa and one to Chengdu in China. Done like a service trip in China as well. I took perspectives, really loved that, and it made me desire to help in biblical translation, and then just realizing a lot for my heart for biblical literacy I think that's just really weak, not only throughout the world, but just in the United States as well. And then that kind of brought it to more of like long-term versus short-term, and just wrestling with, if I don't want to do long-term, like what is a good option for short-term, knowing that sometimes there are missions that cause more harm than good, and so just really wrestled with that and took perspective again to just see what that looks like, and excited to learn more through this class of what good short-term missions look like.
Yeah. So what would you do with the Jesus film? You just want to explain that?
Yeah, so Jesus Film is a mission of crew, and they spend 2 weeks. They go on their tourist visa, and they spend 2 weeks. I think they do short films, so like gospel presentations through short films, and they also do the showing of Luke, the gospel, for like big places. So Gambia was 90% Muslim, and we went in the middle of Ramadan, and we put it up in a market, and we would have like hundreds of people come in and just watch the gospel of Luke in their native language, which most of them only heard translations. And so it's like the first time they're actually hearing the word, which is amazing. And then we work with the local church, and so they connect with them in that and get to hear the gospel. And then once they accept Christ in their life, they get connected with discipleship through that local body. And then we spend the last day in tourism. So, yes.
That's good.
I'm Emily. Most of my experience as mission has been personal discipleship and relationships within the body and outside of it and through work. And I'm passionately committed to the mission of God. Mostly right now here. Currently excited to possibly fill a gap in Christian education that God has sovereignly ordained through coronavirus, and other opportunities like that. So, pursuing a degree in Christian education through a school, long distance, and then also really excited to be here with all of you learning and encouraging others, however they're receiving gifts of preaching the gospel.
You're very humble. You're learning a language.
I am learning, I'm working on learning Arabic.
Yes. So that
I can be a friend to people that end up in Rochester for various reasons, if that's possible. Yeah, to speak to them in their language.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time with those people in the context of sales and business through work. So, and many times they struggled to speak, not because they didn't understand English, but because there's more than understanding and part of speaking language. So there was a definite factor in not feeling, I don't know, language is powerful on a more cultural level, not just literal.
Yeah.
Yeah, Martha was just describing to me today how difficult it is even to sit through. She doesn't want to come tonight or to this class just because it's difficult to sit through, and even an hour of English teaching, and she has to focus.
Just mentally, it's really
This mental focus of
really
wanting to
tough.
teach another language, and she's very good with her English and decent with other understanding, but it just is a different kind of listening that's exhausting. She's doesn't want to take it on yet. So.
And the level of English that you use in a context like this is even more difficult.
It is, and there's colloquialisms, and then there's just even figures of speech that speak at a heart level that we're just comfortable with, that she's very much not. So when we're in private personal conversation, when she's teaching me Arabic, we go back and forth, and I'll explain what I mean when I say something, and then she'll explain what she means when she says something. That's hugely helpful with speaking my language. So.
Nice.
I'm Kevin. Most of my mission work has been on the accompanying aspect of recording video for either pastors' conferences or Kurt's organized a trip to Myanmar in 2013, and we met a lot of pastors over there and try to help facilitate their needs of the orphanages and their missionary work. As the pastor who took us along this trip, I think he had 60 children at least that lived with him, and then he was ministering to over 20 churches that spanned the equivalent distance of here to Duluth. And he would just be constantly going between them, preaching and teaching. And he got stabbed with a knife a couple times. He just had
That was a beast.
he's all of this tall. But he set in my mind a passion for missions that I had never seen before. So he's kind of a huge mindset for me that wherever I am, that's what I want to be engaged in, is things like that. So.
Dennis?
I'm Dennis. Been on one mission trip to Honduras. I look back and I'm not sure how effective that was, but it was my daughter and I, and it was probably better for me than it was for them. I tried to learn soccer and, well, learned that I didn't know how to play soccer. I did come from a previous church who had a very large emphasis on missions. I think they were supporting 20 different people, and they were putting $500,000 a year in the mission. So that was a big force in what they were doing, but more in a supportive role rather than actually the going role.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, felt a little bit like they were doing missions instead of evangelism. So it's kind of sexy to go across the pond, but not across the street. So there was kind of a tension there. Interested in what's happening nowadays, what works, what doesn't work, what a cross-cultural missions looks like. I'm not sure why. I'm an old guy. I am getting towards retirement age, so there may be some opportunities there. But who knows?
Yeah.
So that's
I encourage you, when we were in China, spoke with a lot of Chinese people who told us how great their country was. He said, because all the Americans, they retire and they come over here and they stay until they die because they love China. They do love China, but they're here for other reasons. Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely great. That'd be great.
Curtis, like Kevin mentioned, I've gone to a short-term trip to Malawi and to Myanmar. I guess one of the most impactful trips was to Myanmar, just see the humility of all the Christians and believers that were there, and that impacted me profoundly. Just them being willing to open up their homes and their meals, even though they have so little, just to welcome us in there so that we could help facilitate their needs and present those to the local churches here to bring them more support. I guess right now I work for a mission association, which is an association of other mission agencies and churches and educational institutions that focus on collaborating, connecting people in the Great Commission. And one of our biggest focuses right now is cross-cultural missions in a local context. So, like the fact that there are 4 million unreached people in New York Metro, which is, if all of those people were coming as a city, it would be the second largest in the United States. And just the whole need for stateside missions to be cross-cultural missions. There's so many, I think 80% of the Jewish population that is in New York, which is the largest outside of Israel, have they don't go outside their communities at all. 80% of Jews in New York don't interact with non-Jews. So they have zero contact with the gospel or any other cultures in general. So huge need for evangelism. A lot of major cities, like in Minneapolis, we have the largest Somali population outside of Somalia. Toronto is the second largest Somali population. So just trying to help communicate that and be involved in that.
That's amazing. Tim?
Tim, so Jake, how much has your church told about?
Nothing, just give him.
I heard
Full
one
9 yards.
somebody knew back in the International Mission Board.
I've heard of it, yeah. Yeah, it's a age.
So a year ago, I was nominated to serve as a trustee on the International Mission Board from Minnesota, Wisconsin, from the state convention here. So I feel like I'm thrown in deep a little bit, but I did realize here that Bruce Ashford's mother is a trustee, and I've met her.
Really?
Yeah. So it's a large board, over 70 members. We've had, well, since I've joined, we've had 2 face-to-face and 2 virtual meetings of the entire group. We do probably about every 2 months do a review of the next group of missionaries that are ready to go out with full support from the International Mission Board. So yeah, I feel like I've been a little bit thrown into the deep end of this a little bit. I'm starting to get the acronyms starting to get straight out, but some still are confusing to me. So I'm trying to get a little more background on this. We've met. We do we're assigned to different parts of the world, and I've been assigned to Central and South America, and they've done a weekly prayer call since COVID started. And I've been able to jump on a lot of those and hear what's going on as they've, a variety of how countries respond to it. Some are extremely locked down, some are much more open to movement. And hearing about how they're coming up with ideas on how to reach people in apartment buildings. Some of it is kind of humbling to be involved in that.
Yeah. So those of you who might not know, the IMB, International Mission Board, the Southern Baptist, maybe 15 million members in the U.S., collectively pool their resources together in order to do missions effectively and efficiently. So a church even our size is able to give money to that and legitimately know that we are supporting the cause of missions. And they're able to do it on a large scale. So there's some waste, but they're incredibly effective at vetting out who's a good missionary and who's not. And so the money, admittedly, one of the downfalls is that it kind of becomes a little detached, but the money is very, very well spent. And they take care of their missionaries. And I appreciate the IMB in that they have kind of seen this detachment from the church to the missionary. And they're doing their best in reestablishing that and keeping the relationships now active between the ascending church and the missionary, which in years gone past would kind of just go away a little bit.
Budget's $267 million.
$267 million. Yeah. So how many missionaries with the IMB?
4,200.
4,200 missionaries.
In fact, one thing they said is that they have $1 million a year just for vaccinations.
There you go. So it's a large-scale operation. And so the IMB, North American Mission Board, which is another collective pool of money that the Southern Baptists, that we use to plant churches. Some of those are some of the main reasons that we are Southern Baptist. We're up in the north. We didn't inherit it culturally or anything like that, but they are incredibly effective at doing missions and planting churches here in the U.S. And so we wanted to be a part of that. And it also allows us to continue that on. So Joe and Patrick are able to get a stream of funding through the North American Mission Board just because of our participation with that. Or if we do send out missionaries, they can go out with the IMB and they take care of their missionaries really, really well. Because when they're there, they want them to do missions. They don't want them to fundraise. They want them to do missions. And so the burnout is quite low compared to other areas. And I think they do it quite well. Yeah.
And one thing is that they do the taxes, they completely do the taxes.
Yeah. So it's little things like that really make a difference.
there, we did 3 or 4 mission trips during that time, short term. A couple inner city locations stateside, and Alaska and Dominican Republic. During college, I did a mission trip in India for about 6 weeks, working with the mission there. I studied in the Middle East for a semester in Cairo, Egypt, and engaged with the cultures there. I studied Spanish during college, was an Arabic linguist within the military. I've engaged with refugees in various contexts. I spent most of the last 7 years working with the military, but while overseas, because I spent a fair amount of it in Germany and England, I've also had the opportunity to engage with refugees and minister amongst them. I've tried to support missionaries in various ways in my work that I've been doing. Right now, my focus has been more on, I have friends who are in Pakistan, and the Christians there are having a tough time under the COVID restrictions because they're second-class citizens there. And so when things get hard, their needs aren't met. You know, the government looks out for their own first, and then said Christians kind of come second, if they're looked after at all. So the church needs a lot of support in order to help look after the Christians, because they basically have no access to any resource right now because they don't have jobs or anything with COVID restrictions being what they are. And then also I've been really passionate about what's going on in Zambia with Conrad Mabue and Bodhi Bokum. How do you say his name? Bodhi Bokum. I always say his name. And really, because I've looked at, Middle East has always been a passion, but I also like what's going on in Africa, and I've been trying to, I think that what they're doing within Zambia is much more productive for a solid gospel within Africa than what you see with Pentecostalism and other movements within Africa that I think are more destructive often. And so, yeah, that's my background.
Thanks, Travis. Erica?
Hello, it's Erica. I think my heart for missions had a guy when I was in college. The traveling team came to my campus, and he gave their little spiel on the biblical basis for missions. Ever since then, just been convicted by the need for global missions. I went to Malawi for a week when I was in college with the church that I grew up in, and then I was on the redemption trip to Honduras to Rotan this past February, which was awesome. My hope, if the Lord allows, I just applied for grad school for a graduate degree in nursing, and then my hope is to go like full time somewhere after that's done, and go as a workplace medical missionary overseas somewhere. So we'll see if the Lord changes that, but that's kind of the hope right now. So.
I grew up, I guess, with my parents who were also having fun missions, and not missionaries, but we've just gone on a lot of short-term trips with families since like middle school and high school, mostly to Mexico. And then in college, I did some just short trips to the Canadian Native Reserve, and then also some within the U.S. And then went to Perspectives about 5 years ago. And then they're open up with us, so we've just been kind of talking about how to use our skills that God gave us, and kind of just thinking through whether that would be full-time or maybe part-time after a few years. So we're just kind of in the process of thinking about it.
So we both just moved here from Houston, Texas, in July for my fellowship at Mayo in pediatric ophthalmology. So it hasn't been too long, but we love being here. We want to join the church. We're plugged into small groups, so we're having a great time. So one of the main reasons why I decided to come to Mayo was because my mentor is a believer, and he's passionate about missions. He's been going on trips to Zimbabwe, India, about once a year for the last 15, 20 years. So I wanted to learn not just my medical field, but how to engage in missions. Do one example. So like Benji said, we were trying to kind of figure that out. I had some experience. I spent the summer in Lesotho in Africa, in college, doing medical work, but it wasn't Christian. I spent a couple summers in Ecuador just get a view of what that would be like. And I was supposed to go on a trip to India with that mentor, but got canceled because of COVID. So what I'm looking at now is to kind of test this calling from God, to see if it's really from God and if He's leading us to be kind of engaged on short-term trips while based here, or truly as a long-term calling. So I'm going to kind of test that, learn more about it. And then I think one of the questions was challenges you foresee. So I think one would be like how our family would fit in, if we have children, what that looks like. Because the paths I'm seeing are very divergent, and the medical field here, serving here, local church, missions in the city here versus being somewhere and based there is wildly different. So trying to discern that. That's where we're at.
It's great, guys. Thank you for sharing. I'm just blown away at our church. I feel like are greatly blessed just by the giftings and the callings that's on so many of you guys' hearts. For me, I got saved in college, and I was at a Cru little conference, and right then I knew I wanted to go and do missions to Africa. And so I was doing an engineering degree, manufacturing engineering. I no longer cared if a machine made this, like it was whatever. A heathen can make this very well. And then, so I was going to take a semester off. I'm not calling you a heathen. Okay. I was going to take one semester off, and then I did some missions work with YWAM, which is where I met Rachel, my wife, in our first conversation. She gets right to the point, if you know her. And she says, "What are you going to do with your life?" It's like, oh, wow, here we are. And she had all but graduated high school in like 3 months at that point. And I said, "I don't know when or how, but I'm going to be, or I want to be a missionary to Africa." And she said, "Really?" Ever since 6th grade, I knew I was going to be a missionary's wife to Africa. And so then we knew, even before we had finished our little brief meal, that we were to be wed. And fast forward several years later, she went to Cambodia. After that, I went to Hong Kong and then mainland China, and Nanning, southern China, just north of Vietnam, about 90 kilometers north of Vietnam. And just did street evangelism in Hong Kong. Teaching English was kind of our in, and so it was really nice to just meet with communist officials. We somehow got in with the local communist officials of the province, just able to share the gospel with them over and over and over. And so God really opened up some doors, some amazing doors there. Did that, did some more training with YWAM, then went to Nepal and did some pastoral training there, and lived there for a while up in the mountains, and then also in Kathmandu, in the capital. And then after that, we went to India for a while and lived in Pune, which is go to Mumbai, which is on the west, then go about 5 hours inland, which is where Pune is. And so I did some pastoral training there as well.
So you never made it to Africa?
What's that?
You never made it to Africa?
No. A little salt in the wound there, Travis. Yeah. So, well, you gotta do something. And so we went to, so then Rachel, that's what brings us originally to Rochester. Rachel, you go get a nursing degree, you have something pragmatic to offer in the mission field. And then go to seminary. We have it all lined up. We have our spot lined up with the IMB. We have our funding set. We're ready to go. And our daughter passes away. And it was a shot in the gut, as you can imagine. And so, I mean, you're numb and you're blind and you just have tunnel vision. and super spiritual pastors are the worst people to suffer around because they've had a semester of counseling. Congratulations. And they know Romans 8:28, and they throw that in your face and congratulate themselves on how great they are at counseling. So our community group was amazing there, though, and they just carried us through, and it was a wake-up call because they said, just we have to be honest with you, Jake. This looks like a train wreck waiting to happen. Like you've been dealt a hard hand here, but you're working through it, which is good. But you have a healthy church. You have a community group that they fed us for 6 months. We didn't make a meal, and they said you're barely making it, like day by day. Now just take out not knowing language, not knowing the culture, not having a church, not having a group of people around you that intimately knows you and cares for you. You don't even know how to go to the grocery store to go shopping. And he said, yeah, you can probably fake it for a while and make it, but long term this looks like a disaster. And we talked to some more people at the IMB, and it was kind of I can't do it. For me, it was really, really humbling because, like, in business, I could do it. I started a business, and while I was in high school, I started a manufacturing business, and I did it. And like, I did this, and I did this, and then it came to missions, and I couldn't do it. Like, I just realized this, I just can't do it now. And so, God's grace and providence, and in due time, He brought us here for church planting. And so that's kind of our heart for missions, is that it's like I want it, and it's just seemingly right beyond the grasp. You know what I mean? And so, for me, it was really humbling to go, I can't do it. And so that's our drive for missions at this church, is to not just give money to it, which is certainly needed. Someone has to buy the flights, right? But to train up you guys to go and to display the glory of God everywhere. So that's a little bit of our heart and background for us in missions.